There's a brand new programming language that can enable you to build AI-based applications in just minutes. For example, this CLI tool I created called Gent, which will generate Git commit messages for you based on staged changes inside of your Git repository. In total, it only took me around 20 minutes to create the entire application, using this new language called GPTScript, which is an open source scripting language designed to simplify creating applications that interact with AI models. Now, as a disclosure, this video is sponsored by Acorn Labs, who are a longtime friend of the channel and the company behind GPTScript. However, speaking candidly, the language is pretty impressive and can enable you to do some really interesting things. So in this video, we're going to take a first look at how GPTScript works, what it can do, and how to build a couple of tools with it. On that thunderous note, let me give a quick overview of what GPTScript is. As I mentioned before, GPTScript is an open source scripting language designed to automate interactions with large language models, such as what OpenAI provides. The syntax of GPTScript is largely natural language, but you can also mix it with traditional scripts such as Bash or Python. To show this syntax in action, let's go ahead and create the traditional Hello World. Before we can do so, however, we need to do a couple of things in order to get set up. The first step is to make sure we have GPTScript installed on our system. If you're on macOS, you can install it using the following homebrew command. If instead you're on Linux, there is a script available that you can use, or if you're using Arch, by the way, there is a package available on the Arch user repository. With GPTScript installed, the next thing we need is an API key from OpenAI. You can generate one pretty easily on your OpenAI account dashboard. You'll want to copy this to your clipboard and then head over to your terminal window and assign it to the OpenAI API key environment variable. With that, we're ready to begin writing Hello World in GPTScript. To do so, let's create a new file called hello.gpt. Then let's add in the following line, which gives this file a description, similar to how you would using YAML. Underneath this is where we're going to then define our actual script. GPTScript is written using natural language in a declarative manner, which is defined as an instruction. So the instruction we want to give to the LLM is to just say, hello world. Okay, that should be good enough. If I open up another terminal window and define my OpenAI API key again, we can then run this script similar to how we would with Python or any other scripting language, by passing in the file as an argument to the GPTScript binary. After a short while, we'll get back some output from GPTScript telling us, hello world. Pretty neat, but it's not exactly the most interesting example. Let's go ahead and modify our script to also accept a command line argument, which it's going to say hello to. To do this, we need to add another field to the top of our script called args. This field is used to define any arguments that our script should accept. In our case, we want to pass in the argument of name, which we can define as follows. Then inside of our instruction, rather than saying hello world, we'll instead use string interpolation to pass in our input name. Now let's go ahead and run it, passing in our username input, which we can do using the following flag. After a short while, we should receive the output of hello followed by the name we passed in. Pretty neat, now we're starting to get somewhere. However, we could easily recreate this with any other programming language if we wanted to. Let's go ahead and add a feature which is a little bit more specific to generative AI. This time, as well as saying hello, let's also instruct GPTScript to generate an anagram from our given name. Now, if we go ahead and run this script, we can see that the AI does it in its own kind of AI way. Again, this is pretty cool, but it's still a little AI-esque. Let's instead go and build a program that would normally take a bit of time if we were using traditional programming languages. This time, let's create a script that will download the contents of the Hacker News website, pull out the top 10 articles and save them into a Postgres database. To do this involves a few steps. If you know how to code already, then you can likely figure out what those steps are. Let's see how we can do it with GPTScript. To begin, let's create a new script file and start populating our instructions. Let's begin by writing out that we want a series of actions to be performed in order. The first thing we want to happen is for GPTScript to start up a Postgres database for us. However, rather than using natural language to do this, let's go ahead and define a bash script that GPTScript can use. We can do this by creating something called a tool, which are similar to functions when compared to other programming languages. To define one, first add in a YAML separator, followed by setting the name of the tool, which in our case is going to be Postgres_run. In GPTScript, every tool other than the first tool of a file must have a name. You can think of the first tool as being similar to a main function in other programming languages. Next, let's go ahead and define the instructions. We want this tool to be a bash script that will first check for the existence of a Postgres container. If the container exists, it then checks to see if it's running, starting it if it's stopped. If the container doesn't exist, then it will go ahead and create it using Docker. With the Postgres tool defined, we can now head back to our main tool and instruct the LLM to use it. In order for this instruction to use the tool, however, we first need to declare it at the top of the file, similar to something like importing packages when it comes to other languages. With our first step defined, let's go ahead and open up a new terminal window and test it out. First of all, let's check to make sure we have no Docker containers running. Then, ensuring that we have our API key set, we can call the GPTScript CLI passing in our new GPT file. During this, we should see the Postgres run tool be invoked. Once it's finished, we get some output letting us know that the Postgres database is now running. We can confirm this by running the docker ps command again. So far, so good. Let's define the next step in our instruction, asking the LLM to create a new table in the Postgres database. Let's specify that the table should be called headlines and it should contain the following 3 columns. You may notice, but I've deliberately chosen to not specify the types of these columns. Let's instead see which types the model decides to choose. For the next step, we want the LLM to visit the Hacker News website and obtain the top 10 headlines. In order for this step to work, we need to use another tool. However, rather than defining it ourselves, GPTScript comes with some system tools built in, sort of like a standard library. We can actually see what these tools are by typing out the GPTScript --list tools command. And as you can see, there's quite a few of them, enabling you to do a whole host of tasks, such as interacting with the file system, receiving input from a user, or downloading the contents of a URL. The tool that we're interested in, however, is the sys.http.html to text, which will download the page of an HTTP URL, rendering the content as text converted from HTML. Let's go ahead and add this into our tools list. For our final step, we want the model to insert each entry into the Postgres table that it created earlier. Because this is interacting with our system, we need to define yet another tool in order for GPTScript to do this. Let's go ahead and create one called PSQL command. Let's give this tool a nice description and then specify our input arguments, which in this case is going to be the SQL command we want to execute. For this tool, we want it to be another bash script, but this time it performs the input SQL query by using the PSQL command with the -c flag. Now we can go ahead and import this tool and use it in our instruction. We'll also add an instruction here to escape any quotation marks or apostrophes that may appear in the title. With that, our script should be ready. Let's go ahead and give it a go. Upon doing so, you should see some output make it to the console, letting you know which stage and tool GPTScript has made it up to. Then, once it's complete, GPTScript should give you some output, letting you know it's finished. In my case, it's letting me know that all headlines have been successfully inserted into the database. Now I can open up another terminal window and check out the database using PSQL. First of all, we can check the tables using the \dt command, which shows us that the headlines table was created and exists. So far, so good. Next, let's check out the schema of this table by using the following command. Here we can see that the model has successfully created the 3 columns we asked for, and it's also inferred the types I would expect them to have. Additionally, the 2 timestamp columns also have a default of current timestamp, which is pretty nice. The only criticism I have is that none of these columns have been set to not null, although I'm pretty sure we could fix this if we specified it in the instructions. With our table schema verified, let's go ahead and check the rows inside of the table using a simple select all statement. Here we can see our table contains 10 rows, one for each of the top 10 headlines on the Hacker News website, which shows us that our script worked as intended. Pretty awesome. As you can see, GPTScript is pretty powerful, and by using the concept of tools, you can easily compose some complex actions. If we take a look at the CLI tool I showed at the beginning, Gent, you can see that this is actually a Golang application that calls GPTScript. This is thanks to the Go module, which makes it incredibly easy to integrate with GPTScript. In the case of Gent, I'm only using GPTScript to generate the git commit messages based on the staged git changes, with the other logic of displaying the confirmation prompt and performing the git commit being handled in Go. For me, this feels like the perfect harmony between the 2 different languages, allowing you to take advantage of the strengths of each paradigm. However, if you wanted to, you could still achieve this using only GPTScript. In fact, here is the pure GPTScript version, which has the exact same functionality as Gent. You can find this code on GitHub with the link in the description down below. If I go ahead and run the script, whilst it does produce a lot more output, it still performs the exact same steps, albeit with a lot less code. That concludes our first look at GPTScript. However, in my case, I'm certainly not done with the language, especially as I have a bunch of AI project ideas currently sitting in my backlog. I'd love to know your thoughts, however. What do you think of GPTScript? And perhaps it's something you might use with your own projects. Either way, let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I want to give a big thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.